So without further ado, let's begin. So we're going to have a look at how to set smart business objectives and achieve them in 2022 and beyond. So my name's Daniel Jenkins. I'm head of client services here at Wagada Digital. So we're a digital marketing agency with offices across both St Albans in Hertfordshire and also Cheltenham in Gloucestershire. That's our West of England office. And we look after businesses with the full kind of 360-degree digital marketing mix. So we've been going now for more than 10 years. We've got a real specialism in search engine optimization and technical SEO, but we're also HubSpot partners, which means that we do a lot of work with sales and marketing alignment and digital transformation within the kind of HubSpot CMS and marketing platform as well. But I'm also going to hand you over to my colleague, Nick, who's going to be a part of today's webinar. I look forward to Nick introducing himself to you now.
Morning, everybody. So I'm MD at Wagada. Really, I suppose I'm part of this webinar mainly because I've had, I suppose, 30 years in sales and running businesses. Very eclectic mix of commercial experience across property, recruitment, and various other sort of areas, data and SaaS. So very much coming to this from a point of view of how the relationship between managing people and sales and marketing and bringing them together, you know, and setting those objectives. Day to day, I'm responsible for running Wagada on a day-to-day basis.
Fab, thanks for that, Nick. And I'd also like to introduce my colleague, Jim.
Good morning, everybody. I'm the new boy in the business. So I've been here 7 or 8 weeks. I'm the client relationship manager at Wagada. I've spent most of my life in education, but in a business development role in the last 12 years. I'm a director of the local Chamber of Commerce. I'm a school governor. And I've spent numerous years supporting local businesses achieve their goals. So I'm really looking forward to sharing a bit of that with you later on.
Thank you, Jim. So let's talk a little bit about the team as well, because it's not all about us three. So as I say, we've got a fantastic team spanning the 2 locations. We've got specialists in paid social media, in Google Ads, in SEO, and in, as I say, HubSpot and digital transformation as well. So yeah, as I say, feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn, connect. We have all these specialists and they'd love to pick up with you as well. So what are business objectives? Because it's quite a broad, quite rhetorical concept, perhaps. So some people want it to happen, some wish it to happen, and others make it happen. Who said that? Michael Jordan. And I should know because my wife is currently deep in a Netflix series, The Last Dance, surrounding the Chicago Bulls and that whole world. But what's really interesting is that there are so many similarities between the world of sport and the world of business, in that it's team driven, it's team focused, it's about a collective vision and a collective goal, and it's about you all moving in the same direction to achieve that. And I think one of the biggest challenges that brands tend to face is that alignment piece. So it's not just about setting the goal, it's not just about going, this is where we are now and this is where we want it to be, but how do you make that actually happen? Because the truth is that often as business leaders or entrepreneurs or team leaders or business founders, we can't always achieve it on our own. So it is all about working as a team in order to achieve those shared goals. And interestingly, a bit of insight here is that what were the most important objectives to a number of brands in terms of their digital marketing plan to actually achieve success? And interestingly, top of the list is an increase in lead generation. So it's about actually going, right, what's coming into our business funnel? So for almost 50%, the focus there was on lead generation. But obviously, there are all these other fundamental objectives, that feed into you achieving that ultimate goal. So yes, it's a broad increase in sales revenue, but it could be surrounding building brand awareness. It could be about improving user experience. For a lot of businesses, it's about increasing their website traffic, because ultimately, if we've got more traffic landing on our website, that in turn is going to allow our brand to do all that hard work to bring people into that funnel. And interestingly, For 35%, it's about the improvement of data quality. So I mentioned things like HubSpot and sales and marketing alignment. And ultimately, in order for a digital marketing plan to be effective, you need to have strong data. And that data often needs to be customer focused. So it might be about how you segment your customers. What is that customer profile? How can I analyze what my target market are doing on my website? Are they engaging with resources and tools? Are they spending more than a couple of minutes on the site? Are they browsing multiple pages? All of these are aspects that should feed in to an overarching digital marketing plan. And in time, you might build out a number of objectives that cover these various areas, but they might all have that end goal of increasing your sales revenue and your lead generation as well. So to talk us through a little bit more now, I'd love to hand over to Jim, who is going to give us a bit of an insight into just how we can approach SMART objectives in 2022.
Lovely, thanks, Daniel. Yeah, I suppose the first thing that I said to Dan when he proposed this webinar was, I said, well, surely everybody has goals and objectives set up, don't they? Because to me, that just seems totally natural, regardless of where you work, what business you're in, and so on. And I suppose I didn't realize I was doing it in all my time in education, but I was writing goals and objectives on a monthly basis, setting targets, following up, nominating people to be responsible, etc., etc. And I just assumed it was something that everybody did, regardless of the business they were working in. I come to Wagada and I speak to the people here, and I'm really, really surprised at how many people or how many clients we have who haven't written down goals and objectives. It's all up here. The ambition is there, but it's not written down. And so therefore it's not being communicated across the team, like Dan said. And it's absolutely essential to long-term success for any business. And I just want to sort of make a quick differentiation between goals and objectives. So your goals are your long-term ambitions, where you want to be in 5 years, where you want to take the business in 5 years. And the objectives are very much the smaller milestones and increments that you put in place to help you achieve those long-term goals. And I think in a time like the one we're in at the moment, where it's quite clear that we're probably entering another recession, it feels like it's the last thing you want to do, but it's actually the most important to do it. And it's one of those things, it's really easy to put it off and not address your goals and objectives, but it's absolutely crucial. And now more than at any other time that you deal with those and you do it in the right manner. And it's sometimes a little bit difficult to know where to start. And I know that people sometimes might set themselves a plan that's actually something that they already know how to do. Or they might set a plan that they think they can do, but really what they should be doing is they should be setting a plan for what they want to achieve. And there's a real distinction between those. It's important you make it ambitious. It's more important you make it achievable. And it's important that it takes into factors in all the elements that Dan was talking about, team. Without team, it's not going to succeed. Without communication, it's not going to succeed. Without flexibility, it's not going to succeed. So there's all sorts of elements that need to be considered. So just to go into a little bit more depth about setting objectives, setting goals, setting objectives in particular, we recommend, and we do this for all our clients, that you have to know exactly where the business stands in the first place. And for these purposes, and I'm sure everybody with us this morning has come across this, whether you've done it or not is another matter, but a SWOT analysis is extremely important. So SWOT, for those who maybe don't know, is looking at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So the strengths and the weaknesses are very much a sort of an inward-looking task. So you're looking at your strengths, you're looking at your weaknesses, you're identifying what they are, and you're writing them down. That's the really important thing, that all these things get written down and they're recorded. The opportunities and the threats are very much the external. So, you know, where can you take your business? What are the opportunities in your market? And where is the competition and what is the threat? But one thing I would say is that all four of these are opportunities. So knowing what your strengths are and developing your strengths as an opportunity, knowing what your weaknesses are and improving on those areas and dealing with those areas is an opportunity, as are opportunities and as are threats. Knowing what the competition is doing is really, really important, and how you adjust your marketing and your strategy to combat the competitiveness and put yourself, the competitors, and put yourself above the rest. So that going on to looking in more detail at setting objectives, it's quite a daunting task, and it's difficult to know where to start. And fortunately for us, a gentleman named David Chaffee took it upon himself some time ago to design the SMART method of developing your objectives. And we're just going to make our way through those and give you a little bit of an idea of what they are, what they mean, and what they sound like in reality. So the first one is specific. The second is measurable. The third one is attainable or achievable. Some people say achievable. The fourth is relevant. And the fifth one is time-based or time-bound. So everything we do needs to be set against these SMART objectives. So first of all, starting with specific. Okay, so this is something that has to be either something like a number, it needs to be something like a campaign, it needs to be quantifiable, you need to be able to say that it's exact. And I'm going to give some sort of some ideas about the good and the bad in terms of specific and all the other objectives ahead of us. So specific might be something like increasing your website traffic to the homepage by 10%. Not so specific might be we need to sell more tractors. So you need it needs to be exact. The second objective is measurable. Okay, so this is being able to track the progress. There's no point having a specific target if you can't track it, collect the data effectively, and then interpret it, and then adjust your methods if necessary in that case. So in our example, that might be to increase website traffic by 10%, but we want to do it in the next 60 days. So we've set ourselves a goal that is measurable. Or it might be not such a good thing, is that we're going to sell more tractors as quick as we possibly can. So you can identify the clear difference between the two. Thirdly, we need to talk about attainment, and it needs to be achievable. It needs to be realistic. We shouldn't be afraid to break a project up into smaller elements. Sometimes we might start with what we think is a clear objective, but in fact, we find that it's easier to break that down into even smaller elements. We can always ramp it up if progress is good. So how that might look is, it might be that we increase our traffic by 10% to the website, and we're actually looking to do that on a 2% week by week basis. So rather than looking at the 60 days, we've now brought it down, we've broken it down and said, you know what, let's look at it on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, or other way, because that feels more achievable, it feels more attainable. And maybe not so good is that we plan to sell all our tractors by the end of November so that we can have Christmas off. A rather stark contrast, which nobody can measure. And let's talk about relevancy. So hopefully everything we do in business is aligned to our core values. It's really important that outside of honesty, integrity, transparency, and all those other characteristics that we hope to instill in the way we run our business, is that everything we do is relevant and sends out the message that is clear about our own goals and values and mission and philosophy as a company. If we don't do that, it's very, very difficult for the customer to really genuinely trust the business they're working with. So that's really, really important. And aligned to that is the fact that the relevancy should be putting the client first. Everything you should do is about delivering for the client. And from that, you should get the goals or the returns that you're looking for. So in terms of website traffic, so we're increasing website traffic. We've set ourselves something that's measurable. We've talked about how achievable it is. But then we want to talk about the customer care and delivering the best possible outcome we can for the customer. So that's the relevancy. On the flip side, our tractors are the very best. Everyone should have one. Not so relevant. And then finally, time-based or time-bound. Everything we do needs to have a realistic timescale. If we don't set timescales, nothing will ever be achieved. And this is where the sort of constant reviewing of your objectives and setting time scales, resetting time scales if necessary, is really, really important. Otherwise, your 5-year goal becomes your 10-year goal because you haven't set the time scales for your objectives to reach the 5-year goals. So that might be something along the line of we have a month-to-month plan for our website before setting out to achieve our specific objectives of 10% increase in traffic. So it's very, it's broken down into smaller time slots in order to ensure that we achieve it. And on the tractor front, the sooner we start a new sales campaign, the sooner we will finish. It doesn't quite work like that. So that sort of gives you an idea of the SMART objectives. So we talked about the good and the bad, but how do we actually go about recording that? Now, I don't know if we've got this slide, Dan, but just something very, very simple is about writing it down. If you don't write it down, it won't get done. And I think we've got a slide coming up which gives us, are we moving to evaluate first? Yeah, so just to go on, you may have seen this, but some people like to call them the smarter goals. So we've set our objectives. If everything's going well, we've reached our goals. But it's extremely important, we've just mentioned this already, that we continue to evaluate and that we set up a system by which we can evaluate the objectives in order to make sure that we attain the goals. It's not a failure to change direction. You know, any smart company knows that if your objectives are not attaining the goals that you wish to achieve, and that you can identify the reasons why, and you know what the solutions are, and that you're flexible and agile and willing to change, then readjusting is not a sign of it going wrong. Readjusting is just adapting to the circumstances as they are. So it's really important that whilst you're evaluating your SMART objectives, you're always thinking about being flexible and always being willing to adjust and to bring the team along with you as you make those decisions, so that everybody's on board and is hopefully achieving the same objectives and goals and willing to adjust and change when necessary. And then this is just to leave you with something like this. So I won't scare you, but I think when I was in education as a business development manager, my objectives was something like 30 pages, covering curriculum, covering pastoral, covering fundraising, covering whatever. It doesn't need to be that long. But what it was really, really clear in terms of what the objectives were in all the specific areas, what the action was. So what is the actual thing we're going to do? Who is responsible for it? It's really, really important that you put a name to who takes responsibility. It might be one individual leading a team. It might be one individual. And then it's got to be time bound. So when is it going to happen? This has to be achieved by end of January 2023. And then you want to outline what success looks like. So you go back to the objectives you've set, and if the objectives meet what you've achieved, then that is the success criteria, and that goes in that box. It's really, really important. And that success criteria, that's the objective. That's written in right at the start, and that is what you're hoping to achieve. But like I say, I think the most important thing is that you must write it down. It needs to be a document that is forever being reviewed by the team, by the leadership, and that you actually set yourself to achieve the goals and the objectives, and you keep monitoring it. It's so, so important. I love being able to go to my, what we call college improvement plan, and just tick things off, tick, 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 done that. And then to be able to report back to governors and say that I delivered. And there's a hell of a lot of satisfaction in being able to do that. And as a business, hopefully what you're getting in return is growth, profit, etc., etc., etc. And just to leave you with a small anecdote. So this is something I picked up. So the 1979 Harvard Business School MBA graduating class were asked this one single question: have you set written goals and created a plan for your future attainment? Surprisingly, the results were that 84% hadn't set any goals or any objectives of any kind. 13% had written goals, but no plans on how they were going to achieve them. And just 3% had concrete goals and concrete objectives on how they would be a success. 10 years later, the 3% had a higher net worth than the other 97% combined. The 13 earned twice as much as the 84%, and even more incredible, the 3% earned 10 times as much as all the others put together. I think that probably tells its story in itself. Thank you. I think that's it.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Jim. That's fantastic. And no, I think, as you say at the end, it's so interesting when you see it in practice, and like those numbers don't lie in terms of the value in actually having clear objectives to work to, rather than just that sort of shot in the dark in terms of the direction that you're going in. And I think now more than ever, as we do enter a sort of what is quite a volatile landscape for businesses and a potential economic downturn, recession, I think minds have to go to how we can set those really clear objectives so that everybody is aligned and in the same direction. Which brings me on really nicely to my colleague, Nick, who's going to talk to us now a little bit more about what this can look like in practice for businesses, and where some brands are evidencing that they're taking a much more agile approach to their marketing, a much more agile approach to how they do business, and how they're actually pivoting in 2022 and moving with the times into a sort of a new approach through to 2023. So without further ado, I'm just going to hand you over to my colleague, Nick, and yeah, he'll take it from here.
Thanks, Dan, and thanks, Jim. So, yeah, obviously, it's without stating the obvious, we are in uncertain times, and because of that, everyone has to adjust and reflect on how they're doing business, who their marketplace is. Just sort of anecdotally, one of the things that we've done, which I suppose aligns with SMART goals, is really just look at our business continuity plan, look at our risk assessment for the business, and just to make sure, take a look at our clients and try to understand and put ourselves in their position and understand how they're going to get through the next year, 2 years, and whether they align with, us supporting them or not. And then we are able to focus more on those companies that are going to be in a better position to move forward. One of the things that we set as one of our SMART objectives that we start off with is we always work on a 6 out of 10 plan in terms of how realistic it is to achieve. So rather than 1 which you can do without even turning up to work, and 10 which is going to prove very difficult for the business, always set realistic goals. I think it is important to say that. So, so the next thing really is make sure, I suppose, from a team perspective, that you've got everyone with you within the company. Make sure that everyone is bought into really what the objectives and the goals are for the business, and that everyone is aligned and on the same page. I think it's really important to make sure that everyone understands what the roadmap is and be sure what their goals are as well. Also, from a point of view of your customers, do you really understand what's driving them as well and what their goals are? Do you understand what their marketplace is like and what is the needs of their customers, if you like? So it's important to really understand that side of it as well. So one of the things that we've looked at is kind of how you build a lot of loyalty with customers. And there's a number of different ways that companies have done that, and we kind of can give some examples of that now. So as an example, McDonald's do their kind of merchandising and their bucket hats and the bags and giveaways that they do. And they've seen this as a way of getting people to come back and stay loyal to them. They've really put a lot of investment into their app, for instance. That's how they've found to do that. We've got a brand such as Sephora, is that the next one down, who have done that slightly differently by looking at kind of the lifetime value of their customers. So it's always important to differentiate. Don't just look for the next sale, look for what the whole lifetime value is of that customer. And then you've got companies, it's well documented as an example, that over the last, this year, particularly Netflix, has really suffered the loss of a lot of its customer base. But they're addressing that by going out and really starting a promotion of kind of using the algorithms to understand exactly better what people want to see, and then getting that information in front of them through direct marketing and subscription models. Okay, so one of the things it's important to do is kind of also set sort of, so what makes a smarter objective? Right, let's come to this one. Right, so as Jim mentioned, always reevaluate, always look at how you can improve your plan. You are not going to be in control of all the circumstances. So you need to be aware that you need to be flexible and ask for help if you need to. Ask the people around you, the team, to all come together and make changes as is necessary. Okay, so one of the things that can help you is we're HubSpot partners, and they produce very, very good marketing material to help you with planning out your SMART goals. This is a download, and there's a link in here that we can share with you for a guide. And within the guide, it gives you a template basically that you can follow, and this comes in line with the graph that we showed earlier, the template that Jim showed you earlier, where you can actually sort of set out what are your SMART objectives, what are the goals, do you feel that it's realistically attainable? So again, this is where we come back to setting that sort of 6 out of 10. How long is it going to take you to do it? And kind of what are the biggest challenges that you achieve? So just by using, by documenting it, writing it back, it allows you to reassess and to go back and then see if you're on target for those. Okay, so just as a kind of key takeaway, remember to make your objectives ambitious, but also achievable. Make sure that you do your SWOT analysis, because without that, you're not going to actually have a foundation really to understand what your SMART goals are. Use your SMARTer objectives and make sure that you take everyone on that journey with you. Make sure you've got the team built in that they're coming along with that journey.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Nick. And we've had a couple of questions come through. I've had one come through on here privately, and I've also had one come through by email from somebody who's requested a copy of the recording, and they wanted us to address a couple of points as well. So I'm going to open that up to the room, as well as asking if anybody had any further questions. But just before I do, I just wanted to introduce a forthcoming webinar that we have, which is about GA4. This one's proven to be quite popular already. Google Analytics is changing. Next year, we're rolling out a brand new Google Analytics platform, which is GA4. So there's a migration that is happening as we speak. So this is going to very much be one of a number of events that are going to be happening, whereby we're going to be giving an intro to GA4 in this one. And then we've got a masterclass forthcoming. So the masterclass is going to dig a little bit deeper, and then there'll be other various pieces of content and insight along the way as well. So questions. I've had one come through. So I just wanted, well, as I say, there's two I need to sort of cover really. One is regarding, and so Nick, Jim, feel free to kind of jump in just a little bit more in terms of what you mentioned with regards to that sort of business continuity plan and what that might look like for businesses, just in terms of how to approach that, what barriers there could be along the way, and how to make it kind of realistic, because obviously it is such a changing landscape. So I guess the question is, how do we where do we begin with a business continuity plan, and how do you make sure that it's kind of realistic and achievable and lines up with the business's objectives?
Yeah, I mean, I think.
Go on, Jim.
All I was going to say is, I think with any kind of planning, you fail to plan, you plan to fail. It's always things do, and I can't emphasize enough how important the SWOT analysis is. It really does set down all the opportunities, and I mean that because I talked about the fact that strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are actually all opportunities when properly planned and identified correctly, and they should be the start of your business plan. You know, they should be where you start regardless, because if you don't know where you stand now as a business, how can you plan for the future? And that really needs to be thorough. It needs to be in depth. I see some of the SWOT analysis we do here amongst the team, and it really goes to the nth degree, and is the starting point for what we put together as marketing strategies, which is no different to setting up a business plan. It's a business strategy, it's a marketing strategy to support your business plan, and then from that you go to your SMART objectives, and you identify each one, and you make it succinct, measurable, etc. But yeah, that's all I would say on that.
I think from a business continuity point of view, you've got to look at external factors as well. So I think, again, we've taken a very reflective look at each of our clients. What is their marketplace like? What is the likelihood of the impact of a decreasing, a worsening economic environment like, and what is the impact likely to be on that business? Do we need to pivot the services that we are going to offer them in order to generate quicker wins, or to pivot? For instance, an example of this, a really good example of this, is at the moment, a lot of clients are saying to us, well, we can't actually we can't do business in the marketplace at the moment because, you know, we can't grow as a business. We can't, because we can't get the staff. So one thing that we're doing at the moment, a lot of, is employer branding. And that is all about selling yourself as a business to go out and find the right staff and attract them and make yourself stand out against the opposition. And that's a very tangible way that you can help a business grow in a difficult situation, in a difficult economical environment. So I think it's looking at all of the aspects like that. We look at, as a business, what are the critical needs of our business, and what needs to be important, again, if the economy gets worse and what do we need to be delivering? What can we get away from without, tools wise or whatever it might be. So I think you just need to take a holistic overview of the business.
Interesting. Thanks both. And on that, the other question was surrounding benchmarking. So obviously, Jim, I know you talked a lot about SWOT analysis. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on this, but in terms of sort of where to start from a benchmarking perspective, how can you maybe look back to look forward in terms of making those goals specific? Did you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, well, naturally, it's always important to look back. If you're going forwards, you need to know where you came from, and you need to look at and analyze how the business has grown in the last 5 years in order to look forward to the next 5 years. But I think where the SWOT analysis comes in handy with the benchmarking is that you are actively looking at where you sit in the market and how you compare to the competitors in that market. And we gather so much information about competitors for our clients, which really help generate the benchmarking points, where you should be going forward, or if you're there, how do you go beyond that? I mean, there are all sorts of ways within the SWOT analysis that you can really identify what the benchmarking points are within your markets. Yeah, absolutely.
I think the interesting thing I always look at with that as well is to not be fooled by seasonality. So if you're benchmarking, it's so important to look year over year rather than period on period. So you're looking at it going, well, what was happening literally this time last year versus now, and not just looking at it in terms of the first 6 months of the year versus the second 6 months of the year, because obviously so much can change in that period. So I think from a benchmarking perspective, it's really important to take seasonality into consideration and things like that as well.
We also look at
question then. Yeah, go on.
Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, we also work from a point of view in bigger cycles, so rather than month by month, on 3 monthly cycles, because it's much easier to look at those peaks and troughs over that period of time, if you're looking year on year as well.
Yeah. And just on that, it links to the next question that's come through privately, which is what tools can you use to better track your goals as a team? So the interesting thing there is that we as an agency use kind of Google Data Studio to create a more visual report. So that's pulling in data from Google Analytics, but it's presenting it within the Google Data Studio platform. Now, what that enables us to do is make sure that we're focusing on the data that actually matters. So it's the data that matters to the client, it's the data that tells the right story, and it's the data that we can engage with internally as well. So that's really useful to make sure that you're looking at the data that matters and not just looking broadly at all data that you just get sort of sucked into. And as Nick was saying, that's the sort of thing that we look at on either a monthly or a quarterly kind of basis, looking at bigger periods of time. Nick and Jim, did you have any thoughts in terms of tracking smart objectives, longer term tracking of smart objectives, and how you might do that as a team in terms of making sure you're all moving in the right direction?
Well, again, a good CRM, really. Again, we're advocates of HubSpot, but it doesn't have to be HubSpot. But anything that all of this data is only as good, I think Dan or Jim said it right at the beginning, it's only as good as the information you put in. But if you log the information, that data can give you a lot of data in terms of understanding trends, understanding performance, understanding differences in income over a period of time. You can really use that data and analyze it very effectively.
Brilliant. Fab. Thank you very much. Sorry, Jim.
No, I was just going to ask a quick question, actually, because what I found really useful when I was in education was we used to get a benchmarking report every year. And effectively, yes, like Nick says, it's all about the quality of the data, but effectively, thousands of schools fill in the data. It goes to a company that then pulls all that data together. And I just wondered whether that's the sort of thing that happens in other businesses or industries, whether there are governing bodies that gather that data, produce reports within various different business sectors, because that's not something I obviously naturally thought of, but I had that information all the time when I was working in education, and it was so valuable.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. The whole kind of big data piece. Like I've built a strategy a couple of years back that was quite heavily reliant upon much bigger scale data in terms of the target market, types of engagement, timings. You can actually take much bigger insight. There's tools, there's websites such as WordStream, for example. WordStream do a lot of reports surrounding user habits, consumer behavior, and all those things can help massively to feed into any objective setting. Because I've worked with clients whereby you might be setting goals with them and they might not necessarily have the exact benchmarks. So you can go, well, do you know what? We can do all these calculations based upon industry standards, industry averages, what we know in the marketplace. And then we can take that and go, right, we want to take that one step further. We want to set that goal 0.5% higher than perhaps the 2% conversion rate within your industry, so that we can aim to get that sort of advantage. And so actually, I do think that bigger data and that data analysis piece and all those reports can be super useful, so that you're not looking too internally, you're looking externally as well at what's out there. And from a marketing perspective, that can be massively helpful, especially if you're venturing into a campaign or an industry or a marketplace that the business hasn't got the proven metrics behind it to take it that step further, like if it's been sales driven for the last decade and now it wants to ramp up its marketing, if you see what I mean. So I do think that's interesting.
Yeah, what I also found useful was that quite often the data coming out was reassuring.
Yes, yeah.
So when I was reporting back to major stakeholders, I had evidence that actually where we were in the market was in a good position.
Yeah.
It's just always nice to have that sort of data available.
Yeah. Fab. Well, thanks ever so much, everybody. I'm conscious that we only had a couple on the live stream today, so obviously everybody who's registered will be receiving this copy to watch in their own time afterwards as well. But I hope it's been beneficial. If you have any further questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. But otherwise, we wish you all the very best. Have a great day, a good rest of the week, and good luck in setting your objectives for the months and years ahead. So thanks again, and have a great day.
Thanks very much.